why don't I just ask you to tell us a little bit about where you're from, and feel free to then just jump into your story that you want to share with us today.
Absolutely. Okay. So, and I thank you for having me do this. My name is Tim Murray, and I'm from Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. Rode dirt bikes, raced motocross, and I just kind of lived a daredevil life, so to say. And so back in the day, I had a friend. He had built a motocross track in his backyard, and they all stood there and looked at it, and they didn't know what to do. They built it too big. So they called me. We should come over and take a look. And I thought, okay. So I went, and I stopped over, and I knew right away it was too big. And I thought, well, you know, there's just too many people standing around to not give this a shot, you know. So I looked around, and, you know, I made my decision. I thought, I'm going to do this. And so I went back as far as I could, and I just started grabbing gears. And I hit that jump, and I overshot it. And I landed about 20 feet past where I needed to land on flat ground. And I don't know if you know much about motocross, but when you hit a jump, you always want to hit the downside of your landing. Okay.
Sure.
So I didn't have that happen. I hit the flat ground, and so things just went catawampus at that point. I was taken to the hospital. I was coherent. I could hear everybody talking. My eyes were not open. My head was down. I was having a tough time breathing. Got up to the hospital, and they at that point had told me, they said, you smashed 2 vertebrae in your lower back. 22 years. About the age of 38, well, mind you not, I guess I should say, I quit racing motocross at about 33. I just couldn't do it no more. And every day was a struggle from that day on, you know, so getting in and out of my vehicle was tough. Not tough enough to where I couldn't do it, but it was tough. Getting on a dirt bike was extremely tough, but I would do it. Just all the things that shouldn't have been tough for me were tough. And so time went on, and I decided, you know, I better quit racing motocross, because, you know, the older I get, the more frail I am, and I just didn't see things getting any better. And so I'm going to say about the age of 35, I started to feel some weirdness in my back, and I didn't know what to think at this point. So my wife, who is a vet tech, she's kind of like my doctor. She's my wife, but at the same time, she's very knowledgeable. So she's kind of like my doctor. And she told me one day, she's like, Tim, you need to go in. And I'm like, no, you know, let's just wait. You know, I always felt like time was gonna make things better. That wasn't the case. So I hit 38, and I knew at this point I was outside mowing the lawn, and I went to get off the riding lawnmower, and it wasn't happening. And I tried everything, and I'm at the time I was a pretty slim guy, probably about 180 pounds, and I should have had no problem getting off that mower, and I could not. Thank God my father-in-law was in the house. My wife was in the house, and they kind of came out and kind of watched and realized I was having trouble. And, well, we eventually got me off the mower, and I was keeled over for about a good 15 minutes. And at that point, my wife was like, this is it. You're going to see a doctor. Really excited about that. And so I did the MRI, and I came back in, and my wife said, well, I'm going with you. And I thought, oh, great. So now I'm screwed, you know. So I can't even fudge the stuff. So I went in, and I sat down, and he kind of looked at me funny, and I knew right then and there, I knew I knew I was in trouble. And I shouldn't say in trouble, but I knew it was serious. And he looked at me and he said, Tim, have you ever heard of I looked at him and I said, "What?" I'm like, "Can you say that again?" And he did. And I'm like, "You got to say it again." And so he ended up saying it 5 times. And I'm like, I will never ever be able to pronounce that word. So I actually had to write it down. And I practiced that word for 2 months before I could say it straight. And sciatic nerve was horrible. So from the right leg, or I should say from the right butt cheek, all the way down to the foot, felt like electricity going through my leg. And at the same time, I had numbness. And at the same time, it felt like my foot was being crushed in a vice. And at all times, it felt like I had a car parked on top of my foot. And so I just couldn't justify any of this. And then the walking sensation of my foot felt like I had rocks super glued to the bottom of my foot.
I told my doctor Legos, but I tell people while we're on the sciatic pain for a second, that nerve pain, dude. I tell people, I said, who have, we'll call it more structural issues as opposed to nerve pain. I said, I'm not trying to downplay your pain because I've got that kind of pain too, man. But that nerve pain is a whole nother, excuse my language, but it's a whole nother fucking beast.
Oh yeah.
Woo.
Sciatic nerve was horrible. So from the right leg, or I should say from the right butt cheek, all the way down to the foot, felt like electricity going through my leg. And at the same time, I had numbness. And at the same time, it felt like my foot was being crushed in a vice. And at all times, it felt like I had a car parked on top of my foot. And so I just couldn't justify any of this. And then the walking sensation of my foot felt like I had rocks super glued to the bottom of my foot.
I told my doctor Legos, but I tell people while we're on the sciatic pain for a second, that nerve pain, dude. I tell people, I said, who have, we'll call it more structural issues as opposed to nerve pain. I said, I'm not trying to downplay your pain because I've got that kind of pain too, man. But that nerve pain is a whole nother, excuse my language, but it's a whole nother fucking beast.
Oh yeah.
Woo.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, the thought of suicide, I've never had that. However, I could see where one would want to say, this is it. Just for the fact that I can see where, how long can you do it? How long can you go living like that?
Exactly.
And you can only get to the point, you can only go so far before you start to then realize, man, there just is nothing you can do.
Yeah.
I went to go visit with the pain doctor, and at this point, he said, "Well, I'm going to try you on some gabapentin." And I said, "Doctor, I've already done that." He's like, "You have?" And I said, "Yeah, we've gone that route. We've done this. Doesn't work." And he said, "Well, I'm going to try you on something else." So he tried me on something else, and holy moly, I can't remember the name of what it was. Day 3 of taking it, I called him up. I said, "This ain't gonna work." I couldn't even focus. Walking to the mailbox was too much, and I told him it's not working. So, much needless to say, he said to me, he said, "I think you're a prime candidate for a spinal cord stimulator." And I said, "Oh," I said, "Well, I got a friend who's got one." I said, "So let's talk a little bit about it." So we did, and I talked with my friend that's got one. I talked with him quite a bit about it, and he had told me his story, which wasn't good, but I still, I explored, and I was like, okay, well, there's people that are having really good luck with these. My neurologist was really against them. He said, 40% success rate. And he said 60% of the people end up getting them taken out within 2 years. And I said, well, I'm never going to know if I'm part of that 40% unless I try it.
Yeah, and I personally think his numbers are a little overly pessimistic, but from the studies I've seen, but again, all they know is what their patients report.
This pain management guy that I had gone to see had told me he thought I was the prime candidate for the spinal cord stimulator. And prior to my neurologist being against the spinal cord stimulator, he did eventually say, this might be something for you. So I did a lot of study, and again, like I stated before, I've got a pretty good friend of mine who he had the spinal cord stimulator installed. He had actually already had his in for about a year, and he didn't have good luck. I could give you a list of reasons why, but he chose not to go back for reprogramming. He just took it from the day he left the surgery and never went back. And so he just there were options that he just didn't take. And I told him that, you know, in fact, I just told him that the other day. I'm like, come on, you know, let's get it over with, get back to the doctor, you know. So with that being said, I did a lot of my own research. I saw a lot of success. I saw a lot of horror stories. I followed you, and you were actually 99.9% of the reason why I decided I'm going for it. You know, I read everything you had posted. I watched your videos. And I was like, man, this guy's the real deal. Like he's not cutting any corners. He's not sugarcoating anything. He is the real deal. And I'm going for it. And so I did. And I got the, what did they call it? The trial. So they did the trial, and I had 100% success. I was outside running around. I hadn't done that in years, decades. Running around, kicking the ball. I've got a little guy. He's 4 years old. I was able to take him out. You know, I was able to get back on that more. Things were just phenomenal. And so when they took that trial out, I considered calling them and telling them that I couldn't make it because I didn't want it out. I wanted to just leave it in. Tears, and boy, it was just one of those where like it worked, and I wanted to keep moving forward and did not want that thing removed. But he ended up taking that out, and so right when he took it out there, I got my surgery date. I think 3 days later, the insurance approved to get the permanent, and I went back in, got the permanent in 2 weeks later, and 3 weeks after the permanent was in, the leads migrated. We still to this day we still don't really understand why. It just happened. So the leads migrated, and I figured I got to keep going forward. I got to, you know, try this. So we went through some programming, tried to do what we could with what we had, and came to conclude 8 months later, it just wasn't cutting it. So with that being said, I wasn't ready to walk away from this because this worked, and this did wonders for me. I mean, I was 100%. I wasn't on any pain meds at all. I went from taking pain meds to the day this thing got turned on. I didn't touch a pain med from that day forward until the leads migrated. So I was 100% success. Actually, I always tell people I was 110% success. So after the situation took place where we knew we had to do something, as far as having the revision, I sat down with my neurologist and I asked him, I said, you know, I happen to have a revision. What would you do? And he didn't even start to talk. And I said, you know what am I doing? Why am I asking you? I'm like, you don't know what this feels like. You have no idea. I said, this was just I said, dumb question on my end. I apologize. And he looked at me kind of funny. And I said, you'll never know. You'll never know. I said, I shouldn't have even asked you that. So I went and I did my research, came back to your website there, and your Facebook, was watching some of your stuff, did some research, reached out to a couple people. And last week on Monday, May 20th, I went in and had my revision, and we they installed the paddles instead of the leads this time. And what a difference. What a difference. Now, the leads worked, and they did their job. but I'd be praising the ground that the doctor walks on today for those leads. Had they not migrated, it was just unfortunate that they did. The paddles have been installed. I just got turned on Tuesday, and this has been another success. I'm walking. I do have some foot pain, the crushing pain. There's some things that have to get worked on. It's only gonna get better as I proceed to work with the reps and we continue programs, you know. So I've got some programming to do. But
you know, that's something we hit on. It's a process. I think a lot of people don't go into it expecting to be a process, and that's why I started making videos. And I appreciate your kind words about the videos I make. But knowledge is power, especially in something as complicated as this. And people need to be prepared for the idea that this is a process. It's not set it and forget it. You know,